So hello, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to the next in the series of the AI and Democracy webinars hosted by the UK Democracy Network and ANTIPARTY. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. So a little bit about your hosts. The Democracy Network works to strengthen the relationships and connections between organizations, projects, and individuals working to build a healthier democracy in the UK. The network is open to all of those working in and around issues of democracy, power, and voice in the UK, providing you with the resources, information, and collaboration opportunities to take your work to the next level. Anti-Party is a pro-democracy movement born from the Partygate scandal, looking to transcend the two-party system by applying collective intelligence for systems change. We want to empower individuals to collectively contribute towards positive change and restore hope by reimagining a system that works for us and not those in power. Through a combination of art and creativity, experience and expertise, we seek to inspire new solutions to old problems. My name is Bella Roberts. I'm the founder of Antiparty, and I'm pleased to introduce Jeremy Evans, a former co-conspirator as we worked together on my research project this summer. He's a former journalist, teacher, and engineer, now running the startup Embeddables, a low-code platform for rapidly building and iterating on democracy tools. Embeddables grew out of the experience that Jeremy had with his co-founder, Matt, a former political speechwriter, when they had an election tool they'd built went unexpectedly viral, and they had to figure out how to scale some hastily written code to 2 million voters in a matter of days. So as we dive in, I encourage everyone to share their thoughts, comments, questions, and reflections in the chat box throughout, as we intend for this discussion to be as interactive as possible. There's dedicated time at the end for Q&A, so you raise your questions to the group and have a further conversation. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over now to Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Bella. Yeah, thanks to everyone who's joined. This is really great. And yeah, thanks to Democracy Network and Anti-Party for putting on these webinars and for inviting me to speak. So yeah, a tiny bit about me. As Bella said, so my background is in journalism and engineering, web development, but I also did a physics degree before that. And I've done some lecturing on journalism as well. That's my background, but now I basically am full-time doing startups. I've been running startups for sort of 7 or 8 years, with a big focus on building civic tech, civic tools. And my journey has been kind of all around trying to find out how those two fit together. How can you do startups and have a startup model that's sustainable, but also be doing something that's actually useful? And the sort of journey of how startups and tech has evolved, both in itself and also in the public eye over the last decade, sort of has kind of mirrored my growing existential crises of trying to like make those things work. And you'll probably pick that up in this presentation. So yeah, just kind of contents page. These are the 4 sections I'll be covering. It's basically a collection of my thoughts on civic tech, on AI, and on UX, and some stories about projects that I've been involved in and projects that I'm aware of, and trying to sort of tie them all together. So it jumps around a bit, but hopefully it will make some kind of coherent sense. So I'll be starting off with just kind of covering a brief history of civic tech. I think most people here will be familiar with most of the stuff I'm saying, so I'm not going to spend too long on that, except for some case studies, which I want to highlight. Then I want to talk specifically about AI and civic tech. Then number 3 will become more clear after I've talked about the history, but this is really starting to talk about how civic tech can have its own, what I call a kind of renaissance. And then finally, some things that I'm excited about, ideas, design patterns, and projects that I'm aware of, although I'll be kind of sprinkling some of those through the other sections as well. And then a Q&A. And I've no idea how long this will take, so we might have a very short presentation, a very long Q&A, or it might be the other way around. So we'll see. Okay, so let's jump in. Brief history of civic tech. Whenever you see an image like this, I've generated it using AI because this is an AI talk. But in order to try and counter the black box in interest of transparency, I'm always going to include the prompt that I used to generate that. So you can see here a lovely example of the bias that ends up in AI, because all of these look like white men to me. from this prompt that didn't ask for white men. So there you go. So these are the 4 stages that I'm going to go through. So early civic tech. So here I'm kind of talking mainly about the 2000s, that kind of decade, where, you know, the internet was a thing and people were starting to build civic tech projects online, but we were still kind of figuring out what was possible and what people would want and engage with. And it was really about trying to sort of be a bit of an antidote to news, provide access to information. So we had things like Turbo Vote was really big. This launched in 2010, so this is slightly sort of towards the end of this period, but this is a project in the US for making it much easier to register to vote and then know where to vote and that kind of thing. And Write to Them was one of the very first examples of projects by My Society, where you could really easily email your MP. Nice and simple. Then we enter the kind of golden age of civic tech, which is essentially from sort of 2010, 11, 12, around to sort of, I would say, 2017, 2018. And at this point, it's a different kind of antidote that people are looking for. It's the information overload antidote. And so educational tools start to become the dominant thing here. So this is a slide I've used a few times of sort of, you know, when we started to realize just how kind of misinformed we all are about things, and civic tech was really trying to counter that. And we saw the birth of these things called voter advice applications, or VAAs. So this is the classic, like, you know, 10-question quiz. You answer some questions and then it matches you with a party. It tells you who to vote for. People have called it like Tinder for politics, or they've called it just a glorified quiz or a survey or whatever. And these really flourished in this time, and it really felt like we were sort of entering this, you know, really exciting period of civic tech providing these resources to people so they could be more informed. And it kind of really felt like we were going to raise the level of public education with tools like this. And then we also had My Society growing into this really, like, really awesome, dominant kind of collection of products in the UK. So What Do They Know for FOI requests? They Work For You. It still pops up in the news quite regularly with people, you know, wanting to know what their representative has voted for or said in House of Commons. Fix My Street and Write to Them Again. And some of these started outside My Society, some of them were, and then were brought in-house, some of them were kind of born out of My Society. And then also some other things. So we had Swap My Vote. This became really popular. I think it was probably 2017 was the time when this really became popular. And same with Who Targets Me. This was a really interesting one that popped up you know, as people were becoming more conscious of who is advertising to them, and you know, like, how do we form our opinions? Is it to do with how social media advertises to us? This was a Chrome extension that you could install, and then it would crowdsource all the data about what you and other people are being targeted with, so you get aggregate statistics as well. Okay, so within this kind of like this period of time, this was a project that we launched in 2017 called G 2017, which was designed to match the hashtag General Election 2017. So I'm going to do a quick case study on this. So if you can cast your minds back to when Theresa May announced this surprise election with 6 weeks to go, no one was really expecting it. And then to add a sense of urgency, I'm going to put a little timer up the top. So we had not 6 weeks, we had 7 weeks to go. So we took a look at Google Trends. So for a bit of context, so my co-founder at my current startup, we were already working together on a previous startup at this point. And we had both dabbled at various previous elections in building election tools, VAAs, that kind of thing. And we said, you know, do we want to try and build one of those for this election? The market for this is worse than the Christmas tree market, because it's once every 4 or 5 years that you actually get to do anything. So it's actually a very bad business model to try and make any money or just have a consistent product with consistent users in this kind of market. but we decided to hell with it. So we bought a domain name and we put out a tweet. This was our old startup name. We set to work. So with 6 weeks to go, we booked an Airbnb in Canary Wharf for a weekend and decided to just spend the whole weekend trying to come up with designs. We came up with a lot of designs. These are the real ones. This isn't just some stock image. And then we really just spent a lot of time just experimenting. We really just put a lot of effort into trying to kind of fail fast, this like startup mentality of like, you build something, some kind of prototype, you measure something, and then you decide what to do next, whether to continue or to change direction. And we spent 2 weeks on this. So just prototyping, sending it to friends, asking people what they thought. We didn't launch anything, and we're now at 4 weeks. Then Matt, my co-founder, was talking to his sister, who was at university at the time, and she was saying that she couldn't figure out whether she should vote at home or at uni. And this is something we never thought about before, but it's actually this like nice little loophole that students get where they have a choice. It's the only type of person that really has a choice in the UK, or by far the biggest group anyway. And there actually is some logic to how you can make this decision. You can say, well, let's see if it's a safe seat or a swing seat. So Matt did this little mock-up in a design tool and said, like, should we build this? Would this be useful to people? Sent it to his sister. She said, yeah, that would definitely be useful. So we built it. So this is the thing we built. So you type in your home postcode, you type in your uni postcode, you click compare, and off we go. And then it just says this one has most impact. We put, and then it gives you, go to the quiz or, share on, etc., etc. We put a lot of time into the UX of this. One thing that we realized, to see that like loading spinner that came up, we didn't have the loading spinner initially, and the feedback we got from people was that they thought it was rigged. They thought that it would always show one constituency or another, and that we were like funded by parties or something. And then when we added the loading spinner, the feedback we got changed, and people said, oh, it's crunching the numbers. That clearly this thing is like a real result. So we had a lot of these like interesting UX sort of discoveries about how just adding, half a second of loading spinner or whatever can really make a difference. So the evening that we launched this, this is Newspeak House, if people are familiar, in East London. There was an event there, and I got a few minutes to speak at that event. And in the audience was Jim Waterson, the then political editor of BuzzFeed UK. And he tweeted with a screenshot of this thing and said, neat site. And it went viral. So then we had all these other people tweeting about it. Paul Mason, Owen Jones, Rory Bremner. This is Harry Styles' sister. And then we started to have journalists reaching out. So it all happened very fast. The UI for this part, we really had to go through a lot of iterations to get this right, because we found that because we were trying to convey quite a complicated thing, we found that people would look at it and just get too confused. Because we had to have home and uni, maybe even have the postcodes in there, which we removed in the end, the name of the constituency, the parties, some kind of rationale for why it's a safe or a swing seat, and then tell them which one to do. And it was a lot of information. We ended up taking some inspiration. I really like this story about the original iPhone unlock screen, if people remember this. If you think about, like, this was a completely new like interaction that Apple had to teach people. And so they kind of did it the same thing in 4 different ways. So you have this groove with this thing that you can slide. Then you have an arrow on here telling you to slide it this way. Then you have the word slide to unlock. And then you have this like animation where it would kind of shimmer in the direction that you're meant to slide it. And those 4 different cues that are kind of hitting different parts of your brain, I guess, add up to it being intuitive. And so we try to do a similar thing here where we had, okay, it says that this is a safe seat and this is a swing seat. We have a different icon. We have the color purple, and we have most impact with an arrow pointing down. And the combination of all of those things meant that people would understand it at a glance. But it really took a lot of iteration to get there. After that, we had a bit of second album syndrome because this wasn't meant to be the main product. This was a sort of starter product when people were registering to vote, but what would we launch when people are actually voting? I mean, we settled on this design from that original list, which was a pretty simple quiz with a more complicated results screen, but with a few differences. So this is what it ended up looking like. It really is just, taking 99% inspiration from those other VAAs, the voter advice applications that were around. But what we did was we just iterated a lot on the design and the UX. Our kind of theory was that these things had kind of peaked at several 100,000 people, which is basically the kind of, you can call them the kind of political geeks or the people that are really passionate about politics would take these things. But that if we could get the UX just right, it could kind of break into the mainstream. That was our theory. So the two things that we innovated on mainly, one was these things which we called the bobbly heads. It's basically just a bar chart, but it would change as you answered questions. And because it had these faces on them, it didn't really feel like a boring bar chart. It felt to use as more like a kind of a horse race or a leaderboard or something. And so just by trying to make this thing feel as fun and friendly as possible, it gave people a sense of wanting to click that next button to see what would happen. There is a trade-off here, by the way, of, you show people what's happening, they can kind of slightly game the system, but we decided that was a trade-off worth doing. And then over here, the classic problem with VAAs that we'd kind of identified was you either, like, people really like less yes or no questions. They like it to be binary and simple. But if you do that, then you lose the nuance in the answer. And so what we came up was this two-stage question thing where you would answer yes or no, but then it would say, okay, do you want to just go to the next question, or do you want to do no but or no and? And so what we found was people just wanted to give a yes or no answer to about 8 out of the 10 questions because they didn't have, a lot of knowledge or strong opinions about it. But then there'd be 1 or 2 questions where they had really strong opinions about it and wanted to give exactly the right answer. And then they would use this in order to do that. And so it gave people that flexibility to add nuance and go deep if they wanted, but they didn't have to. And our view is that these two things were a big factor in why this was successful. The other big factor was partnerships. We were lucky enough to partner with these 3 brands. 38 Degrees in particular, campaigning organization, came with over 1 million members that they emailed this out to. And we built kind of custom versions of it with slightly different questions. We didn't let them affect the scoring or the answers, but we let them choose what kind of topics were involved, and then they sent out their version of it. So these partnerships where these things would be embedded, but with their brand and embedded on their site, was really crucial for us. Went out 2 weeks ago, by the way, when we got these. And then finally, we had this really, really complicated final screen where we tried to show how tactical voting worked. This was terrible. It's kind of embarrassing to look at it. It doesn't make much sense. We were trying to have this animation to show how tactical voting works, but this kind of just goes to show how much we wish we'd had more time. We were hard coding all this stuff, and just iterating at this speed was really, really difficult. It was basically just 2 people in a basement working on this. So definitely stuff I wish we'd been able to improve on. But we made it. This was New Speak House on election night. This was our analytics. So this was where we had the register to vote bump with the student tool, and then this was the big bump at the end. This was election day. So the largest number of people used it the day before election day. And the thing I want to point out about this is that these are not the important bits. These are the important bits. This was where we were iterating again and again and again and again and just trying to figure out what would be the perfect UX, and managing to persuade enough friends to be testing version 17 and version 18 and so on, so that by the time we got to these important moments, we'd iterated our way towards some UX that would actually work. So what did we learn? Iterating fast, like I was saying from this chart, you have to do that. The first 99 attempts will be wrong. You can't, however smart you are, you can't jump to the 100th attempt. You have to go through that process and do the trial and error. And so it's really about having as many shots on goal as possible. The business model was definitely not sustainable. Goes back to the Christmas tree analogy here. And the personalization was really crucial. We tried to do this tactical voting thing, and it just didn't work because we were trying to show a lot of people a lot of different things. And so these were the things that we would need to fix if we were to be able to do this sustainably. And this was a nice article written about all the projects going on at New Speak House, including us. And again, it kind of, going back to this golden age idea, it really felt like this was a kind of growing movement, and we would be solving all society's problems in a few years. Unfortunately, at that point, in my view, we kind of hit a dark ages kind of scenario of civic tech, because the antidote that we need at this point is an antidote to polarization, and no one really knew how to solve that with civic tech. So we had Trump, we had Brexit, we had all these things around the world, rise of populism, rise of polarization. And so I feel like we kind of lost our nerve a bit in civic tech. We weren't really making much progress. The funding dried up to some extent. And there was just kind of less confidence that problems could be solved using technology. Pair that with the growing kind of skepticism of big tech and Silicon Valley and all of that. And so that kind of contributes to this dark ages thing. And one quick case study, well, we had that success, but then every attempt after that and subsequent elections completely flopped. But one experiment we did run, I think this was the 2019 election, that was kind of interesting. So we basically did a manual chatbot. So there was no AI at this point, but we let people chat with a human and we just answered their questions manually. We kind of connected up to Slack. So we were just typing in Slack and they were getting the answers. And we were really surprised by the kind of questions we got. We expected people to ask things like, what are Labour's policies on immigration versus the Tories, or that kind of thing. And actually, it was more like, I don't know how to start, or like, how do I even begin the process of deciding who to vote for? And so it was more like kind of talking people through a decision-making process before talking to them about any specific policies. So that was kind of an interesting learning for us. We did learn a lot from it, but obviously it's totally unscalable when it's humans. And so finally in this section, this is the longest section, by the way, because I realize this has gone on for a while. What conditions would there be for a renaissance in civic tech? Iterating at startup speed, like I said, fixing the business model and the personalization, I think all need to be solved. And the personalization obviously points towards AI, which is what I'm going to talk about next. So AI and civic tech, this is the prompt: government plus building plus AI robots. This thing can be really quick because I think everyone here is kind of aware of these things, but I'm just going to really quickly talk about AI's potential to solve problems and to create problems. So, it's not just chatbots. There are a lot of different ways, like content generation, fact checking, user research, personalization. So, even if you can generate a lot of content, making that different for every user. And then the speed of actually building things in the first place. There's obviously a lot of potential for AI to help. But there's obviously also a lot of risk. So bad quality content bias, blah, 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 might destroy the world, ? And my personal bugbear is that right now, because everyone's just adding chatbots to everything, users have to do more typing than they've ever had to do before. So what I'd like to briefly talk about here is other types of user interfaces and user experiences. So this is how maps have developed, or directions, sorry, have developed over the years. So we started with this is how you would give directions to someone. You would talk them through it. Then we had maps. Then we moved maps online. And then we ended up with things like City Mapper, if people are familiar with that, where you can literally just click Get Me Home, and it will give you the direction. It almost comes back full circle, but it's like an instant personalized version of these directions. These three, this is how far journalism has got. We're basically just doing online versions of offline articles. Like the format hasn't really changed. It's just on a computer screen now or a phone screen. So in my opinion, this is what good civic tech does. Good civic tech is the Get Me Home button, where it feels like an app, but it performs a similar function to like information journalism, but in a way that works for the user. Chatbots are more like the first thing. Like having to type in here is just an insane waste of users' time. And as much as people are excited about it, I really don't believe that this is going to be the dominant user interface for AI. Typing takes a lot of time. That's one reason why it's a terrible UX. The flashing cursor syndrome, like you have this, oh, this amazing new website where you can type and it'll do anything. It'll create an app or it'll create an image or whatever. But the flashing cursor syndrome is that you see this flashing cursor and you don't know what to type. And it puts the onus on the user to be creative, and they normally give up before typing anything. And it's also reactive, not proactive. So it waits for the user has to do something. They don't know what all the options are that are available. Whereas ideally, in a proactive world, the AI would be better at choosing the best time to intervene than the user. So what's better than typing to a chatbot? Mouse clicks are better, in my opinion. So these are some screenshots from, if people are familiar with Figma, the design tool, FigJam is their kind of sister tool, more for sort of sticky notes and flowcharts and things. And they've launched a bunch of AI features recently. So things like you can take a load of sticky notes and say, sort them into columns. You can take one sticky note and say, give me more ideas based on that, and it'll give you more ideas. And you can select a load of them and say, give me a summary of everything on this board. These are the kinds of things where for a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of input from a user, the AI can deliver a lot of value instantly. If we compare like the classic generate an image thing, which people are excited about, but how often will a regular user use these unless they're creating a slide deck like me? With over here, this is Canva, the design tool. They have all these, like, they're just kind of like putting little tiny AI features all around their app, just to make it slightly easier to do certain things. In my view, that's the way that a lot of apps will use AI to greater effect and actually get regular usage out of them. There's this thing that OpenAI released called function calls, which is, I don't know how familiar people would be. Could I get like a really quick actually, I was going to say show of hands, but most people have video off. So I'll assume that it's kind of split on how much people are aware of here. Function calls are basically a way of turning text into actions. So it's a way of, when you're building some kind of chatbot interface, as well as saying like, here's a prompt, you are a helpful assistant, blah, blah, blah. You also say, here are some actions available to you that you can run in the app that you're embedded in. And then the chatbot can then check out the text that the user has written, plus the prompt and everything, and decide whether to call one of those actions to kind of run one of those things. So instead of the response being just some text that is like that comes out of the base knowledge, it could call an API, find out the current weather, and then reply with that information. Or it could reply not in text format at all, but it could perform an action in your app. So this is a newer feature by OpenAI, but if anyone is building anything, I really recommend checking these out. This is how you kind of like level up. And proactive AI, this is cal.com, which is a competitor to Calendly. They launched this thing called cal.ai, which sits in your emails. You just CC it in, and then when it detects that people are trying to book a meeting, it will book it. It's a pretty simple thing, but it's proactive because you don't need to be adding extra wording to type to the AI. It just figures out from what you've already done that it can be useful. Essentially the equivalent of the Clippy thing. It looks like you're writing a letter. And then a quick last thing on this. I'm really interested in the format of journalism, as I hinted at earlier. I used to be a journalist. I quit journalism because I was really frustrated with the lack of innovation. And the idea of turning articles into atoms has always been something that I think needs to happen at some point, and then being able to remix these atoms in different ways, depending on the user that's trying to learn, depending on their existing knowledge, what questions they have, etc. So this was my first startup, which was taking articles and layering on these fact cards on top, where the fact cards were linked to each other. So you could explore a question and then go to a profile and then view the original source if you wanted to, or keep asking questions. And this would be, I kind of wish I were doing that. Oh, I wish AI had been around when I was doing that, because it, one of the big barriers to it was just like creating the content. I think there's a lot of opportunity to use card-based UIs with AI. And also hybrid UX. So this is a prototype we built back in the summer called Ella, which stands for Election Large Language Assistant, which combines the VAA style of questions with a chatbot at the bottom. So I don't think chatbots are as bad when you have them context aware on the same screen as something else that you're trying to do. So you might just want to answer yes or no, or you might want to actually find out some more before you answer that question. And it also gives you suggested things, so you can just click instead of typing if you can't be bothered to type. So I think these hybrids are interesting. And finally, generating UIs with AI. So this is like a whole meta level of it, but there are some really interesting tools out there where you can type a prompt, ask it a question, and the AI not only gives you the answer, but it decides what UI to give you the answer in. So here it's giving you a list, here it's giving you cards, here it's responding with a map, and here it's responding with a map and a list, and you can click on different items in the list to see them on the map. So I think there's some interesting stuff here as well. Okay. Part 3. So I talked about this idea of a civic tech renaissance, and I talked about some. The prompt there was rebirth, seeds, shoots, governments, buildings. So I talked about these conditions for a renaissance. Allowing you to iterate at the same speed as startups and big tech, fixing the business model so that it's sustainable, and making it personalized with AI. So this is the bit where I talk about my current project or my current startup. We're called Embeddables. And we are basically trying to solve those 3 problems. This is our builder. So we are a no-code or low-code builder for building web experiences. If you think about a previous world, say like 10, 20 years ago, where building a website, building a marketing site was actually a big barrier. It could mean that a project never gets off the ground because it would cost too much to build a marketing site. We don't really live in that world anymore. We have so many site builders out there that that's normally not a barrier to entry. But when it comes to building the actual tool, in this case, civic tech tools, that you're trying to get people to use on your marketing site, we still have that problem. So we're building, or we have built, this no-code, low-code builder where you can build those kind of things without needing to know how to code and without needing to spend weeks. You can do it in hours or days. This is an example of something built in our app. This is a company called Sleep Reset, which they're an app to help people sleep, and they have this long onboarding process where they have to ask a bunch of questions so that they can find out whether you're a good fit and kind of educate you along the way. And they're a customer of ours, and this is them in our builder. You can build a bunch of different things in our builder. These are all customers of ours, but this is how we make money, is by selling it to companies. We do this in order to do the other half of our business, which is supporting civic tech. So as I'll come on to in a second, we don't charge civic tech for doing any of these things. So going back to those 3 conditions, iterating at startup speed, it's really simple to create stuff in our builder. You can build stuff that would take developers weeks or maybe even months and cost a lot of money. You can do it instantly. You can do it yourself. We have a sustainable business model because we make money from one half of the business, selling it for companies to do onboarding flows. Like these are, we have a bunch of happy customers. That's how we make our money. And then we provide the thing entirely free for civic tech, like I said. And we're building AI in kind of from the ground up. So we have a bunch of AI features in our app, kind of like the Canva example I showed before, where just a bunch of small AI features that help you move faster. So you want to describe a bunch of design changes instead of clicking all the buttons to change them. You can describe it, you can click generate, it'll do it. You've got like some custom code that you wanted to add and you want to explain it, or you want it to write the code for you. You can do all of that in the builder. And then on the other side, we have AI components. So this is a basic like chatbot component that you can just drag in. And then you have all these settings you can add, and we're kind of adding these as more things come out. So giving your users an AI experience as part of this is like a really crucial part of what we do. A couple of bonus things, bonus benefits that people always also get. Because we do this thing for a living, like we've developed a certain amount of expertise here. So all the kind of UX stuff that we've learned over the years, we always, we want people to build the best things on our platform. And so we always spend a lot of time helping with that. Our AI experience is the same thing. And also go to market experience. So my co-founder's been doing sales and marketing for 10 years, and he gives a lot of help on this stuff. And then it's not just expertise, it's also data-driven insights, because we have the data on how our other customers and users, how different experiments have gone. And we have a network of partners. So, we're a Y Combinator backed startup, which means we have a connection to OpenAI. We're in a Slack channel with them. We have a bunch of other YC companies that provide different like parts of the no code stack that we recommend and that we plug together nicely with. So it's kind of like, we're developing a bit of an ecosystem that people can join just to try and help these projects go as fast as possible. And we're also developing a kind of partnership model where, we tend to work with those same membership orgs like 38 Degrees that I mentioned earlier, and brands who, want to do something around election time or whatever it is. And so, we're starting to connect them to the same people, say, oh, you should work with these people. This civic tech tool is really cool. You should partner with these people to help distribute it to a wider audience. And yet for us, the point of all of this is really just to build power outside big tech, like companies like Meta, i.e. Facebook, and Google and Apple kind of hold all the cards here. And non-profits are doing all this great work, but unable to keep up pace. And so we're just trying to be we are a tech startup. We're a for-profit company. We're able to move at startup speeds in order to build the software to then provide to non-profits and volunteers so that they can move at those speeds as well without being a startup. That's the point of it for all of us. How am I doing for time? Okay.
Maybe a few more minutes.
Okay, all right. Vote for Policies. I'm happy to say Matt from Vote for Policies is on this call. Thank you for joining, Matt. We've known Matt for many years, since we were building voter advice applications, actually competing ones originally. And I'm really happy to say that Vote for Policies, here's what Vote for Policies look like. So you take you build a short list of policies without knowing what the parties are, and then you select one, and then it tells you, it kind of reveals which parties you chose and gives you a policy browser, and you can dive into the data. It's a really cool tool. It's been around for a decade. It's the longest standing voter advice application, certainly in the UK, if not in the world. And they consistently get 1 million people to use it every election. So it's not only the longest standing, but it's the kind of the biggest consistent one as well. And, we were talking to Matt, after the last election, just about the number of user requests for features that are built up over the years, that, we're just kind of sitting in a Trello board, because, this is run by volunteers with a very small amount of grant funding. And Matt kind of came to us and said, maybe we could work together. And so I'm really happy to say that this is now, Vote for Policies is now run on Embeddables. So this is that same thing, but now rebuilt in our builder. It means we can move much faster. It means we can build new features. So this is a new feature we launched recently where you have terminology, you can click on it and you get a little fact card that pops up. And there's a bunch of potential for AI features between now and the next election, now that we've rebuilt it and we're kind of moving at a fast pace. So we have a project called Data Machine that we're working on internally for generating vast amounts of subject-specific content to be put into apps like this. So generating all the policies by inputting the manifesto PDFs, that kind of thing, or for scaling so that you could have one in every local election, different content, or every constituency has different content or custom themes and topics. And also live AI for the users, so answering their questions live, or some kind of compare mode. I want to compare this party and this party on this thing, and it kind of summarizes it. There's lots of potential there. This is an example that I did a weekend using our product and also using the same database. So kind of remixing the data from Vote for Policies. Just kind of trying to experiment with different UX patterns. You do enough of these, one of them has a chance of going viral. But these are the kinds of things that, this really took me a few hours on our tool to build. It just gives you 2 random policies, and then you pick which one you prefer, and then you gradually build up this leaderboard here. This is a civic tech project that we're starting to work on in New York. So there are these things in various parts of the US called adopt a drain, where these storm drains which get over flooded need to be cleared. And so if you encourage people to adopt one, then they'll be responsible for clearing it. These things are wildly successful, but they have to be rebuilt from scratch every time they do it in a new city or a new state. And so rebuilding them in our platform is obviously a benefit and means we can move fast. This is a company, a nonprofit that we've been working with recently, supporting with domestic violence, and they have a lot of people coming to their website who don't know which part of the website they need, and so they now have a very short survey at the start where you can click and answer questions about what you're looking for, and really quickly get a resource recommended to you. And this is a fun one. This is a company an education company called Brilliant that we work with, which launched this kind of as a marketing experiment. This are you smarter than an AI quiz, where you would answer kind of logical questions and it would show you whether you beat AI at those same kind of brain teasers. All right, and then finally, some ideas that I'm excited about moving forwards that I've heard about, and there's the prompt for this one. I was really running out of ideas at this point. The format of an expert guide in your pocket, it's kind of like next generation VAAs. I think this is really exciting. I think there's a lot of potential here for AI to help a lot and to give everybody this personalized experience. It's something that we've kind of dreamed about for a long time, being able to give people an automated version of the manual chatbot that we did. This is the Ella tool. I mentioned the hybrid one. This is a journalism app that we've been prototyping, like a new interface for news where you can kind of interact with it more and it's more personalized. This is something that a project I saw in the WhatsApp that a lot of people here will be in, Democracy and AI WhatsApp, answering people's questions for a particular constituency in the UK by kind of adding dedicated information to a chatbot. The antidote to polarization that I sort of left unanswered before, in my view, our best bet at that is focusing on building consensus. When Vox.com launched, so this is almost 10 years ago, they launched with this article, How Politics Makes Us Stupid. And it had this really interesting research from this guy called Dan Kahan, called the More Information Hypothesis. Basically, we kind of know at this point that just showing people more facts doesn't necessarily get people to have a more informed opinion. People end up kind of stuck in their ways, stuck in their views. But what he found was that actually the more facts that you show people, even if they are facts that disprove their theory, the more those people will be convinced about their own theory, even if that has been actually disproved by those facts. His theory for why this is that basically the part of our brain that says, I have more information on this, I am more knowledgeable about this topic, gets retained, and the part of the brain that says that thinks about what the content of that information actually is does not get that information does not get retained. And so you end up in this situation where people just go, well, I know so much about this topic now, I must be right. Very discouraging. But what he did say was that in terms of where he thinks we can find solutions to this, finding people who mostly agree with each other, but where they disagree on one thing, that then has a potential for people to change their mind because they trust that person. So it's almost like you have this Venn diagram, person A, person B, this is where they agree, and the overlap is great enough that they broadly agree, but then this is the conversion zone. This is the opportunity here where someone can actually change their mind and feel safe to do so because they're like, well, if this other person changed their mind on this thing, then maybe so can I. Mostly this is being used in harmful ways right now. So how Russian bots work, not just Russian, but any bots that are trying to sow disinformation and cause polarization, is a bot will gain people's trust by saying a lot of stuff that their target audience will already agree with. Then they will have this big revelation that they got it all wrong and that actually the opposite is true. And then they bring the followers with them. So right now, it's the classic, the bad guys are winning. We really need to be like taking more note of these kind of concepts, I think, in civic tech. This is a project most people, I think, will be familiar with. vTaiwan, for this fantastic initiative in Taiwan, where they basically kind of they've done a lot of things to do with building consensus and deliberative democracy. But the thing that I'm most fascinated by is they've rebuilt how forums work. They created a forum where instead of just getting likes for when people agree with you, which encourages polarization because the more extreme thing gets the most likes, you get kind of points and upvotes for building consensus, which means you need to get likes from people who have a range of political opinions for your post to get bumped up the algorithm. What it means is that they've been able to use this to actually get people who really disagree on things to find a consensus where they say, well, at least we all agree on these things, and find like a compromise in the middle. I think Twitter's community notes feature, if people have tried that, I'm now a contributor to this. It's the one good thing that's happened to Twitter in the last year, is that this feature has grown a lot and matured. And it in order to be allowed to post or to have your rating of a particular community, these are notes that get added to tweets with extra content, like fact checking. In order to have your contribution recognized by the algorithm, you need to have previously rated them correct across a range of things. So if you always rate things in a left-wing direction or you're always in a right-wing direction, the algorithm won't favor you. But if you've been correct that this left-wing thing was wrong and correct that this right-wing thing was wrong, then it knows that you're more unbiased. So there are ways of quantifying this, is the point I'm trying to make. Anti-party. So Bella and I collaborated, and we helped build this tool, which I know Bella's kind of gone through in more detail in a previous webinar. But it's said, my understanding of it was it's a process of deliberative democracy, where there was a point at which it was useful to get feedback from people and then to say that feedback back to them, and doing that at scale obviously requires AI. So this is a really simple tool that we built in a few hours on our platform, and it just meant that either alternatively either the tool wouldn't exist, or it would have cost a bunch of grant money to hire a developer to make it. And the AI Objectives Institute is another organization that we started working with recently, again in deliberative democracy, where they are like how do I explain this? They're running experiments where they get people to record in their views on a particular topic, and then get the AI to summarize it back to them. So they're also making use of OpenAI's Whisper API, and then get people to be able to rate it and sort of say where it got it right and where it got it wrong, to then use that on a broader scale. All right, that's the end. Definitely took a lot longer than I thought. So thank you all for staying with me. And yeah, we exist in order to connect with people who are building things that will be useful for democracy, and to make those things that previously wouldn't have happened or would have used up all of your marketing budget to build it, instead of being able to design it or distribute it, to make those things happen for free. And so please think of us next time you have an idea, or you're building something, or you know someone who is. Thanks very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeremy. That was such a stunning set of slides, and such a great sort of story as to how you got to where you are. And just thank you for everything that you're doing in the civic tech space, for the people, but also making this technology so accessible and easy to use and fun at the same time. Yeah, I really liked how you blended not just democracy and technology, but a bit of psychology as well, and how we're engaging with these platforms. There's a few questions already in comments coming into the chat, so I'll just launch in, and thank you everyone for your attention so far. You already answered some of Laurie's questions. She was, asking about how have you figured out how to fight or counter polarization, and you were talking about consensus. Laurie's also put an article into the chat about how to democratize AI with Helen Landemore, who's came across a lot her in the studies. Yeah, or you can get this. Oh, amazing! Yeah,
yeah, I just clicked on the article. I'll stop screen sharing. So
I was like, oh, brilliant! Yeah, let's get it up now. But yeah, which just came out a few days ago. Which is kind of covering the OpenAI drama recently. And there's a practical question here from Lewis, just following on from what you just said at the end there, Jeremy, about, in terms of, well, I'll just read out the whole comment. So he said, it's super helpful that you're able to support civic tech at no cost. I'd appreciate being able to know a little more about the application process and what the criteria would be to the sort of projects you would support, if any.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, the simple answer is I would love to get to a point where enough people know about what we're doing that we have to start being more picky. Right now, we're really just trying to spread the word. So right now, we're basically accepting anything that we deem to be a vaguely useful civic tech project. What we are a little more careful about is, so we give you access to the tool for free. If you are working on something that is actually partisan, like trying to support a particular party in an election, then we can't support that. So it needs to be non-partisan. If it's campaigning on a particular issue, that's a bit more of a gray area, and we'd have to discuss it on a case-by-case basis. As well as giving access to the platform, we also give access to engineer resources. So we have a team of support engineers who help our customers, but also help the nonprofits that we work with. And in an ideal world, we give you some of their resources to build version 1 of it for you or help you out. We put you in a shared Slack channel so you can ask questions when you get stuck. We're still a startup, so there's always going to be things in the builder that are confusing that we can help you out with. And so those resources depend more on how many requests we get at any one time. But in general, a project that is trying to be innovative about improving democracy and is non-partisan, with AI or without AI, we're very interested in. Does that kind of answer your question, Lewis?
Yes, I hope that was clear. Okay. But yeah, thank you so much, Jeremy. And yeah, I'm just getting flashbacks now when we managed to pull together something for my research project this summer, that chatbot, within a couple of weeks. And I think at times you were a bit shocked and said, oh no, wait, I thought you wanted this by tomorrow, not but really. And it was interesting because obviously that, you talk about iteration with the UX UI, and I guess that sort of chatbot for the Antiparty sort of feedback was, kind of iterating on people's opinions and why they believe what they believe, because as you know, we can change our opinion over time. So there's lots more questions in the chat. Alex has just mentioned that there's often an overwhelming amount of VAAs during elections that potentially complicate rather than simplify the choice people make through contradictory recommendations. So how do you deal with that issue, and perhaps the wider one that the number of people who would use a policy-centered VAA tool isn't concentrated enough to have a real impact on any one seat? Or are these presumptions wrong?
Yeah, those are great questions. I definitely agree that you in that golden age I talked about, actually that was a problem where you even had multiple swap my vote things which would recommend different things. It's a tricky one because I also don't like the idea of there being just one, because then you end up with a monopoly and they hold too much power. So it's a tricky one. I do think on the second part of the number of people to have a real impact on any one seat, when we hit 2 million, which I don't know if that record's been broken, but at the time that was the most that a VA had got. I think we calculated it was we managed to reach 1 in 13 voters in the UK. So I think it does have an impact, because also people who are in a swing seat are more likely to use one of these tools. And so in those swing seats, it would potentially be more than 1 in 13. we had a lot of students using it. Obviously, as you can imagine, it skews towards young people. So you had these certain seats where it was like a university town. I think Bristol West was a big one. So I do believe there is the potential for these things to swing a seat. Obviously, that means that things can go wrong and they can swing it in a direction that doesn't represent people being more informed. But going back to the sort of contradictory VAAs, the organization that I think is most productive in solving this problem is Newspeak House. So if people aren't familiar, I showed a picture of it. We were based there when we were building this stuff. It's a sort of well, to me, it's like a civic hackathon space at election time. But really, at this point, it's kind of like a mini civic tech university. Yeah, Lewis has put a link in the chat. So they run courses, they hold a lot of events, they have fellows who live in for a 6-month period and sort of help grow the community, run events, and do their research there. And the thing I think is most valuable about it is that it helps two people who have the same idea meet before they've gone so far that their egos get involved and neither is willing to quit and join the other person, because that is a problem we see time and time and time again in the VAA space or just civic tech generally. So there's definitely an ego problem where you had this great idea to save the world and now you realize someone else had that idea and you're trying to persuade them to join you and they're trying to persuade you to join them and all of that. So we would also love to play a bit of a role like that as we grow and have more things we're connected to. Obviously, 2 products on our platform that are performing the same function, we get to be there at the point before people build them, and so we can connect people. So we'd love to play a role in that as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jeremy. And yeah, I guess one of the burning questions is, whether you'll be able to recreate something for the next election coming up in the UK, at least, or whether you'd even want to an upgraded version.
Yeah, definitely.
Keep your eyes
we are intending, Vote for Policies, which we're working very closely with, is definitely going to be doing something there, and hopefully other products related to them as well. We're running experiments all the time, building little prototypes. So definitely, it's the same year as the US election. So next year is a big year for us. We are aiming to be spending, like my co-founder, different Matt and I, are aiming to spend 50% of our time on democracy stuff next year. So that means running the company goes down to 50%. Oh yeah, question about how to contact me. Let me put the slide back up. Yeah, it has my email address on it, and I'll also type it in the chat.
On your progress, I guess. Yeah, put the slide, and I guess your LinkedIn profile maybe, and people can keep in touch with your updates. I'm sure we'll be featuring Jeremy in the future as well. Blog post.
My email is in the chat. Jeremy@embeddables.com. Hopefully easy to remember, and I'm going to put my LinkedIn in there as well.
Thanks so much. There's one more question from Esther. So, commenting on how it loves the way that the platform uses AI to speed up the build and development process. Is there any good tools to speed up the research and design on the iteration process potentially? Or is it really just trial and error between the team?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was typing my LinkedIn profile.
Essentially
also, someone tell me if that link doesn't work, because I just typed it instead of opening it, because I'm sharing my screen. But sorry, carry on.
Good. We're like octopus with eight arms. As this comment, love the way that your platform uses AI to speed up the build and development process. Have you found any good tools to speed up the research and design iterative process at all? Or you really just have to keep?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, if anyone is not familiar with Figma, it's fantastic. Like, use Figma for all your designs.
We had 5 people actually put their hand up and say that they've used it.
Oh, great. I mean, it's really a case of just trying to get something in people's hands as soon as possible. So that thing doesn't have to be, oh, thank you, Lucas, have a good one. That thing doesn't have to be something that is a real prototype that does anything. Like, the first thing to get in people's hands is a design. Like, when we built that student tool, Matt did a 1-page mock-up in a design tool, and we sent that around and got lots of feedback from students on whether they would use it and what they would like changed. So trying to like it's crazy how easy it is to get feature creep and say we'll just add one more thing before we show it to anyone. So as a general rule, showing things to people when you're still embarrassed about it is a must. And yeah, just trying to kind of limit yourself to, I mean, if you have an idea for something that is not like, you're not trying to build like Facebook or Gmail, you're trying to build like a tool that people spend 5 minutes on or less online, probably without a login. That's our sweet spot, and that's Civic Tech's sweet spot as well, in my opinion. That kind of thing, I would say as a rule of thumb, you should be trying to get some feedback from people on a daily basis. So if you go 2 days where you've been building and haven't got any feedback on something, and not the same thing as the day before, but you've heard what someone said, change something, even if it's just you've done a wireframe mockup that was sketched by hand, and then show that same person or someone else the new thing that you've done. If you go 2 days without doing that, then as a rule of thumb, I think you're doing too much building and not enough talking to users. But in terms of tools, yeah, I think Figma is the main one. I would say there are plenty of prototyping apps also where there's some way you can like take a photo of a napkin sketch you've done and then hook them up with buttons. So you can say, oh, you know, this thing, you click this, it goes to this other sketch, and then you can have it on a phone and it feels like a prototype. Also, now you can there are AI tools that will turn the sketch into an actual app, which is crazy. We're working on integrating that into our app at the moment, actually.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeremy. That's really inspiring and helpful, practical tips. Just conscious of time, we are running over slightly, but there is interesting. Okay, so Bruno's just got a quick question here. Do you recommend paying people to get UI feedback? As you mentioned friends quite a lot, maybe some people want to branch out even further.
Yeah, definitely. The good thing about friends is you can have a conversation with them and you can ping them at a random time and just say like, what do you think about this? And you can ask the same people the same thing. Like not all the platforms that will let you pay people will let you contact the same people again. I think some of them do. But definitely like, if you have some kind of budget, use all the money that you're saving from using us instead of paying developers to put some of it towards paying users for user research. I personally, I would focus more on the qualitative than the quantitative, because to get quantitative, you have to spend quite a lot of money to get enough people. So it's just like getting them to say, the best ones are where they click through and they're recording themselves and they're talking through what they're thinking as they see it. I think those things are really cool. And you can learn a lot just from like 5 or 10 recordings. So it's very cheap. So put some of the money towards that, and then some of it towards distribution, like certain types of ads and things.
It's like democratizing the development of democracy tools. Well,
yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeremy. There is one final question, but with everyone, just for the last few seconds, and thank you so much for everyone's attention and engagement. This has been an amazing discussion, and I can't wait to keep in touch with everyone. So please join the WhatsApp group, add Jeremy and I. I'll put the ANTIPARTY website there as well, so you can check it out. There is a quick poll, please, on the topic of feedback. If anyone can just spend 10 seconds filling this out, just for the benefit of the co-hosts. The Democracy Network, for example, would just love to get your feedback on how these webinars have been going, or how you enjoyed today's session in particular. And then Matt asked this question as well. Final one for you, Jeremy, please. But as you know, well, you work together closely anyway, but he says, Matt goes, as the current main benefactor of the brilliant Embeddables technology, I can assure everyone that they are the real deal and worth talking to. Did you pay him to say this? No, Jeremy.
Yeah, use some of your marketing budget towards paying users to say things like that.
But Jeremy, with more people on board, could we move closer to a single platform for solving all of or more of voters' issues at election time?
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I do think part of the sort of getting people to work together, other than just saying like you should join forces and work on the same project, is just getting people to link to each other. We have almost every election partnered with at least one other organization, not just for distribution like 38 Degrees, but also where we link to other tools. So normally, a voter quiz at the end, they get a result. What's the next take action thing? It's like find your polling station or go vote, but there's also swap my vote, or there's also learn more. I think at the G2017 thing, we actually linked to vote for policies at the end to say, like, if you want to spend a bit more time going into more detail, you should take this like richer quiz to get a richer answer. So that solves some of it, I think, but definitely, like, yeah, if we can get to a point where there is a kind of like homepage for an election that incorporates other tools. I mean, with us, we're called Embeddables. The reason is that all of these things are embeddable on a website. So you build it in our product, you get an embed code, it slots into your website, or we can host it for you, but most people choose to put it in their existing website. But it also means you can put it in other people's websites as well. And you can even put it in other people's tools. So you could, in theory, have like a kind of parent tool where each button takes you to a sub tool, and it's all kind of within the same environment on the same domain. So yeah, good question. I'd love to see that.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, the future is looking very eventful. It's just around the corner. You said multiple elections going on next year, not just UK, US, but Indonesia, and I think that was actually mentioned in the article, the Helen Andermore one. So yeah, I'm sure you have your hands full. There'll be massive expansion there. Mexico as well. Yes, Patty. So it'll be a really, really interesting time. And I think, as someone put in the AI and WhatsApp group about Meta's or for Facebook's policy on, how they're going to be monitoring or putting boundaries around, the social media sort of spreads around election time, things sort of banning it a week or so before, and just to stop these sort of echo chambers going on. So I think there's just a few more respondents coming through on the poll, but I'll stop the recording there. And thank you so much, Jeremy, again. That has been amazing, and looking forward to what's next.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for attending, everyone. It's been great. Thanks for the great questions.